Losing a loved one is utterly devastating, and not only do you have to try and come to terms with what's happened to them, but you also have some big decisions to make. Most of our families, in fact over half of our families supported by Scotties, are living in military accommodation. So they have to start to think about, when the time comes that they have to move out, where do they go? Do they stay local and be surrounded by their friends and in the military community? But if they do stay local, will they be able to cope with the emotional effects living in a military community will have on their family?
I remember one time I was coming home from school in the car and I saw a big "Welcome Home Daddy" banner on someone's house, and it just hits you like that. You think, I wouldn't have had to seen that if I lived somewhere else, but where we live, that's obviously, there's people coming home from tour all the time.
I remember it being such a tough decision at the hardest time of my life. I normally would have turned to Lee and we would have made decisions like this together, but this was the first time I had to make a huge decision all on my own.
Lived in Tidworth, that's where Lee was based, and when I was first told, I couldn't bear the thought of moving out of the house, the quarter that we were in. But as time went on, I just realised that it was just getting harder and harder to stay there, and I just thought, for Kai's sake more than anything, we needed to move out of the military area so that he could start afresh, and just know that, you know, not every family has their daddy picking them up from school. I just think he found it quite hard when a couple of the dads come home from Afghan and pick their children up from school. That was particularly hard for Kai.
I made the decision to move out of the military community, but a few families do stay. I guess it's because it's what they know. There's no right or wrong answer in this situation, you just have to do what you feel is personally best. I loved living in Tidworth, I loved being part of the military community, and I didn't really want to leave it, if I'm honest. It was my home, it was my life, all my friends were there, Kai was settled in school there, but it came a point where I just realised that I couldn't emotionally cope with living surrounded by the military. That's just how I felt.
The castle in this box?
Yeah, the castle toys in this box. So what room do they need to go in the new house?
See, we're just making it like a different house.
That's right.
It was really hard. The day that we left, I thought I was going to get emotional, but I found it really, really hard to shut that door of that quarter and think I'm never going to go back in there, and that soon there'll be another army family living in there, because that is the most memories I've got as a family. It's where Brooke was born, it's where we lived for quite a while as a family, and we had some really good times there, but I've gone on to realise that I can take my memories with me, and we've got so many photos, but the actual leaving Tidworth is hard. I've gone from a big family down there, you know, and it was our routine, it was our way of life. So, you know, you don't just lose a husband and a dad, you also lose your home, Kai's school, all your friends that are there.
I've never regretted moving back to Norfolk where my family are. I've had great support from them, and Kai and Brooke settled really well, so I was really lucky. Moving Kai halfway through a school term was tough, especially at the hardest time of his life. You get a big sense of guilt that you're moving him away from his friends at school and moving him into a school where there's no other military children. I've spoke to lots of other families that Scotty supports, and they often feel the same. When you are in a military town, the school are 99% full of military children, so often the teachers are even married to military personnel, so everyone understands your way of life. When you move your child into a school that's outside of a military town, it can be really tough and they can feel quite isolated. Often, due to no fault of the schools, the teachers don't have the right training or information or knowledge about military children and what it's like growing up in a military town. At Scotty's, we want to make sure that the schools are well equipped and that the children are getting the best support they can during the hardest time of their life.